Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani and welcome back to this YouTube channel that takes on all kinds of issues related to understanding narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and the harm done by these relationships and the mental health impacts to help you heal, to help you make sense of it, and hopefully move forward into your lives in a more sane way. We're back to the good old Proverbs series, and more I'm talking about the Proverbs that all of you have sent to me, and they've been very thoughtful and really interesting and actually have led me to think about narcissism in new ways. So today's proverb is, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me." Now, interestingly, this proverb is originally sourced from a magazine in the 1800s called the Christian Recorder, which is a publication that was actually affiliated with the African Methodist Episcopalian Church, sometimes known as the AME Church. And that's actually quite interesting and compelling from a racial perspective, especially when we embed that into the history of that time. The idea of sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. We've all heard this proverb, and I have no doubt some version of it exists in many other languages. In fact, in the comments section, it would be interesting to share the variants on this proverb in your languages of sticks and stones can break my bones. The basic takeaway is if you beat me, it hurts. You throw rocks at me, it hurts. But if you call me names, I can't be broken. And when a viewer sent this one in, I actually got a little bit introspective. I was that bullied kid. It was the 1970s when I was growing up, and we were one of the only ethnic families in a small town. And I thought I was being a little bit brave and sassy when I would tell the neighborhood bullies and the schoolyard bullies that, hey, sticks and stones can break my bones. But my little 5-year-old self actually didn't believe that. I did hurt. I can actually still remember my heart beating when I'd hear these things and the lump in my throat I would feel when these kinds of harmful words were thrown my way. Words hurt. I would argue that words hurt more than being hit or stricken or anything like that. And the way our brains work, those words get encoded into those traumatic memories that play out as negative self-talk echoes for a lifetime. So the link between this to narcissistic abuse is probably simple to all of you. Let's face it, the vast majority of narcissistic abuse is verbal and emotional. It's the criticisms, the insults, the manipulations, invalidation, gaslights, the rageful words, and even the nonverbal stuff, the not being heard and being ignored, the not being seen, the contemptuous dismissiveness. When I talk to survivors of narcissistic abuse, the wounds and the scars that stay with them are the words. They hear them over and over again. These words that the narcissistic abusers share can drive core beliefs, core fears, and can dismantle core hopes. And the sticks and stones model is why so often people who experience narcissistic abuse do not get the help that they need. For far too long, I would argue, even until today, many models of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, family violence, they're all viewed through a lens of physical abuse, bruises, cuts, physical injuries, hospitalizations. And when that abuse is psychological, law enforcement, justice systems, families, other stakeholders, heck, even for a long time, even DV-focused programs, tended to give the psychological and emotional parts of abuse short shrift. And it would often get minimized. It would often be written off as like, people who are in relationships say things in the heat of the moment. I'm sure you can talk it out. Nobody's hitting anyone. And of course, let's face it, it was only in the last 40 years or so that physical violence within intimate relationships actually started being taken more seriously. So let's call this what it is. It's a very slowly evolving issue, something that hasn't even evolved in much of the world. But the words of the narcissistic relationships are what do the harm. And yet, without the sticks and stones, most experiencers of narcissistic abuse, as I said, are just not taken seriously. And that just further gaslights and invalidates the survivors and may impede them from seeking help or even finding help. Anybody out there listening to this who has heard cruel and invalidating words as a child knows how powerful these words have been and how much of a toll on their mental health and development that those words were. Anyone who's in a narcissistic relationship knows that the words and the manipulations are what are the hardest to shake off and what magnifies the sense of self-doubt, of confusion, and of self-blame. Now, again, I've said this before, that I have had numerous survivors of narcissistic abuse tragically say to me, bruises or an injury or a black eye actually would have made it so much easier for them to be taken seriously by family or friends or even other entities meant to help or protect. Survivors share tales of being unable to get temporary orders of protection that was based solely on psychological abuse. The sticks and stones are what get taken seriously. The words often do just as much harm. All experiencers of physical abuse also experience psychological abuse. It's universal in all abuse. Now, slow bits of progress are being made. The United Kingdom was a leader in this by recognizing coercive control as a real phenomenon and subject to prosecution. California signed coercive control legislation into state law in September of 2020. And again, it's going to, as with any new legislation, there's a sort of a wait and see to determine how it looks and holds up in court. States like Connecticut are about to push this legislation on coercive control through their legislatures, one would hope. And this is progress, but the slow, glacial progress of legislative systems is really of very little solace to people who are now, today, enduring daily emotional abuse in narcissistic relationships and feel unsupported today. You've known what I've believed on this for a long time, that therapists need to understand this, HR needs to understand this, family court needs to understand this, lawmakers need to understand this. The words are doing so much harm. And without real consequence, there is very little likelihood of survivors' rights being adequately considered. Many times, survivors of narcissistic abuse feel a tremendous sense of shame. They'll report feeling a sense of weakness, a sense of self-blame, that it is words, just words, right? And the patterns such as invalidation and gaslighting that are having the largest impacts. They say, oh, I shouldn't complain, nobody's hitting me. This shame and self-blame will lead them to often not seek out help or to even learn that these patterns are not okay, and systems often support that idea. If I hear one more person tell me that gaslighting is just two people having different experiences of the same event, I'm going to burst. That's not what it is. But this enabling, this soft pedaling, and this revisionism is what allows these narcissistic patterns to be framed as, oh, I'm sure they don't really mean it, or, oh, it sounds like you're just making too big a deal out of it. It's just words. People sometimes get mad and say stuff, rather than accurately framing this stuff as harmful. Anyone who has ever been harmed by words over months or years or decades recognizes that they are the strongest and most harmful psychological weapons of all. And the invisibility of the scars and wounds caused by these words means that survivors often do not get the validation, support, and the guidance that they need to heal. It is time we put this proverb to bed, because when we tell children this, that sticks and stones may break my bones, that words can't hurt me, then we teach kids that words can't hurt. And then the children doubt themselves when they feel hurt by words. Words do hurt. Words are weapons. And perhaps we need to edit this proverb, and it should be, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will break my psyche. And please do go to the video notes on this one. We have provided domestic violence resources for those of you who want more guidance in that space, as well as some information on coercive control for those of you looking for more information. Thanks again for tuning in.